insensitive.
Colorado Springs, it's time for Drive Time Sports.
Self-aggrandizing, superfluous nonsense.
I mean, he's basically irresistible to people for the same reason he can pretty much only work at a carnival. He has nothing to prove or disprove about himself or to himself. He has no shame.
Here's your host, Ryan Kaufman.
Hello there. Welcome in to what is today? Tuesday edition of Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman coming your way live from Las Vegas, where tomorrow night the Air Force women's basketball team will be taking on UNLV. Great to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR or any of the streaming platforms of those two fine radio stations. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Ray Dominguez back in the Extra Sports / KVOR studios, the Drive Time Sports studios. That's what we should just do. We should just combine the two and say that it's the Drive Time Sports studio. So allow us to proceed here with this fine radio program. And let's start with the Denver Broncos, shall we? So Sean Payton, as you were probably well aware of, is not one to miss out on an opportunity to show how much, quite frankly, how much better at this head coaching thing he is than everyone else. Now, you may believe he is or he is not, but if there's ever a time where he can showcase his ability as a head coach, he relishes it. And the other thing about Sean Payton is he'll tell you about it as well before he does it, right? He trashed Nathaniel Hackett, right? Had a couple of lattes, started running off at the mouth, saying what an awful job that Nathaniel Hackett and his staff did with Russell Wilson. And then he proceeded to have a better season and get more production out of Russell Wilson than Nathaniel Hackett did. Then you have, after the wild card game last year against the Bills, he made quite the statement when he said that they felt good about their chances of beating the next team if they were to advance. That team obviously being the Kansas City Chiefs. And then he followed up this year. We didn't get to really see in the second meeting at Arrowhead, but the first meeting, Sean Payton beats the Kansas City Chiefs. And then you obviously, in between all of that, he takes Bo Nix, and there was a lot of criticism around it, a lot of questions of whether he would be able to make it work with what many believed was the fourth or fifth best quarterback in the draft. And now here we are, back-to-back playoff appearances and an AFC championship appearance under his belt. And then we have the latest instance of this. Sean Payton, just minutes after finding out that his quarterback, Bo Nix, the guy that he took despite people saying he wasn't worthy of that pick, that Bo Nix didn't have enough to be a quarterback that could win a lot of games in the NFL. A guy that, despite all that, helped the Denver Broncos reach the playoffs back-to-back years and helped them get to an AFC championship. That guy broke his ankle. And Sean Payton found out that he would be without Bo Nix the rest of the way, and he would have to go into the AFC championship and eventually the Super Bowl with his second-string quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. And this is what Sean Payton said just minutes after finding out Bo Nix was hurt. So, not what Sean Payton said there, I think there was not, I believe in Jared Stidham, not, we'll rally around and we'll pull together as a team, that coach speak type of stuff that you hear time and time again when a starting quarterback is injured. He said, watch out. He said, watch out. Watch out is a threat, ladies and gentlemen. That is a threat. Watch out. He threatened the Patriots. And by the way, to a lesser extent, whoever comes out of the NFC Championship between the Rams and the Seahawks, he threatened them. He said, watch out, in addition to obviously telling you and I that. He threatened one of the best defensive minds in football in Mike Vrabel. The guy, if you recall, hammered the wedge that existed between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. He had a hand in ending the Patriot dynasty when his Titans beat the New England Patriots. And Sean Payton's like, watch out. And if you think it's just to you and me, it's not. He knows that his comments are public, and he knows that they'll make their way to Foxborough. So here's Sean Payton once again laying it all out there, calling his shot. But this is so different than any of those times I mentioned. When he trashed Nathaniel Hackett, when he said after the Bills lost last year that they could have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs. The stage is bigger, and the task is more difficult than, say, getting Taysom Hill or Teddy Bridgewater to win a few regular season games for you. I mean, that's the thing. It's people are complimenting Sean Payton, and for good reason, for what he was able to do when Drew Brees was hurt in New Orleans. But that was during the regular season. This is the AFC Championship and maybe the Super Bowl that he's trying to do this. And he's doing it with a backup quarterback. It's not like we saw Stidham for, I think, one kneel down against the Dallas Cowboys. That was it. So this is a world of difference between those previous times that Sean Payton called his shot and ultimately delivered as head coach of the Denver Broncos. If he pulls this off, winning a Super Bowl with Jared Stidham, it will be his magnum opus. It will be the best job of coaching he has ever done. And I know there was a lot of emotions around what he did in New Orleans. But he had Drew Brees. If he does this, I mean, we talk about guys, their second act and how important that is for someone's legacy. Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay, Peyton Manning going to the Denver Broncos, and we see it with, coaches. Well, for like guys like Carroll and Belichick, their second opportunity was, or their second act was vitally important to their legacy. And what has transpired here is under no one's control. Sean Payton didn't dial it up. Like, this isn't by design that Jared Stidham's going to be starting the next two football games, or at least the next one. This all just happened, but yet it presents an opportunity for Sean Payton to do some of his best work coaching, and the fact that he told everyone to watch out, that he threatened Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots. And yeah, maybe he caught himself a little bit there and like, ooh, do I want to go that? And then he followed it up with watch. Said watch, and we all will on Sunday. We will watch on the edge of our seats to see if Sean Payton can do this against a New England team that finished with the same record as the Denver Broncos, if not for a tiebreaker. That's the only reason why the Broncos are hosting this game. New England throughout the season proved themselves just as worthy of getting to a Super Bowl as the Denver Broncos. And Sean Payton, minutes after finding out what could very much be devastating news, should be devastating news to a football team, he doesn't just rally the troops. He doesn't just put on a brave face. In true Sean Payton form, he is absolutely defiant in the face of all this and says, watch out. This guy, and I've said it numerous times since Sean Payton joined up with the Denver Broncos. I mean, this guy just keeps raising the bar or writing checks, however you want to phrase it. He keeps upping the ante, not just with his success, but with what he says. And to this point, and this is also what I have repeatedly said, he follows it up. As much as his comments hit your ear wrong and you go, really? You're going to say that? You're going to do that? You don't care about bulletin board material? You don't care about the blowback if you fail? And he doesn't. And it just all goes back to what I would imagine his mindset was when he was mulling what jobs to take. Or just mulling, I think he was always set on coming back to the NFL, but when he decided, all right, I'm going now, he walks into those meetings with the Denver Broncos and basically tells them, I'm doing it my way. And that's for roster construction. That's with their highly compensated franchise quarterback, supposed franchise quarterback. He says, if I don't like this guy, he's gone. I don't know if he said that to the Denver Broncos, but he told them, like, I'm doing this my way. And he just repeatedly has done it exactly his way. And as shocking as his comments may be, it is absolutely on brand for who Sean Payton is, and especially what he has been since he arrived with the Denver Broncos. And if you thought that this game couldn't get any bigger for two teams that have a proud history and have been waiting a while, Broncos much longer than the Patriots, to get back to this stage, you didn't think that was Sunday's going to be a big enough stage? Now you have Sean Payton saying, watch out. Watch out for Jared freaking Stidham. It's going to be something. Regardless of how it turns out, it's going to be something. To that end, the question today, 719-247-1313. Do you believe in Jared Stidham? Do you think that the Broncos can beat the New England Patriots with Jared Stidham? Sean Payton says, watch out. Does that fill you with confidence? Are you riding with Stiddy? The Stiddy bus? Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that, Ray. I'm not doing that anymore. But are you riding with Jared Stidham? Do you believe in him? 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Tuesday edition of Drive Time Sports. Coming up next, why I think some people who are trying to be complimentary of the Indiana Hoosiers are actually minimizing what exactly we saw last night. That's next here on Drive Time Sports, Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Welcome back. Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday. Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Last night, the Indiana Hoosiers pulled off or finished off one of the most improbable rags to riches story we have seen in college football, maybe ever, as they beat the Miami Hurricanes last night, 27-21. Here's their head coach, Curt Cignetti, on just how they were able to pull this off. Yeah, obviously Fernando Mendoza, a huge reason why the Indiana Hoosiers were able to pull it off. But look, I think that people are trying to be very complimentary of the Indiana Hoosiers. I don't think anybody's trying to minimize what they're doing. But there's a phrase that keeps getting tossed around. And watching the game last night, watching the post-game coverage on social media, I see these phrases or some form of them all over. Now your program has no excuse. Now anyone can do it. And I think that in an inadvertent way, it actually diminishes, minimizes what it truly is that Indiana did. Because there's an implication there when they say anyone can do it. And now your college, your favorite university has no excuse. I think the connotation here is as long as you can fundraise, as long as you can play in the NIL world, you can win. And look, I don't want to make Indiana, who has Mark Cuban as an alumnus, as a booster. Okay, I don't want to make it seem like Indiana is scraping two pennies together to afford their roster. By some estimates have them as one of the 10 richest rosters in all of college football. But they're not that close to the first. Okay, so they're not outspending everybody in college football. It's not just the money. You know, if it was just the money, then maybe we would be talking about Oregon. Or how about Texas Tech? Why didn't those teams do what Indiana did? They bring in more fundraising. They have more NIL dollars. Texas Tech is funded by an oil billionaire. Why is it Indiana and not those teams? If it's just about spending the money, it's because it's not. The story that we saw reach its conclusion last night is more Moneyball than I think some people realize. You know, two of the key contributors last night, not Fernando Mendoza, obviously, he came from Cal, but I went back and looked, and Air Force fans, you'll appreciate this. Two players in particular, I'm not saying they're the only two, but the leading rusher for James Madison in the bowl game just a few years ago that Air Force beat James Madison, they won by 10. The leading rusher for James Madison, Kalon Black, ran for, I think, 60 yards last night for Indiana in the national championship game. They're leading one of their stars outside of Fernando Mendoza, linebacker Aiden Fisher. Right? Probably the best player Indiana has on the defensive side of the football. He was the leading tackler in that bowl game. That, again, I will reiterate, Air Force won. So at least two key components to the newly crowned national champions, lost in a bowl game just a couple of years ago to the Air Force Falcons. What Indiana did with their money is spend it the wisest we have seen any team in the albeit short era of NIL. What they did was they went and identified guys. And it was easy for Curt Cignetti to do because he came from this world, right? Came from James Madison. He took a few of those guys, went out and identified players that I actually think fit what the transfer portal is supposed to be. The transfer portal is not supposed to be, hey, I'm going to get in every other year so I can cash in and I can reset how much money I'm making. The transfer portal and this freedom of movement that players have is supposed to be so a guy that balls out at a James Madison can parlay those skills and that production into getting a role on a Power 4 football team. And Indiana's roster is loaded with guys like that. Guys, they found, to the Moneyball aspect, as I'm looking at Curt Cignetti being interviewed by Reese Davis on my television set, they did the Moneyball thing in finding the market inefficiency. When NIL started and the portal and all of these rules all came together to create the Wild Wild West that college sports have become. And CU is a perfect example of this, right? Everybody chastised Deion Sanders for replacing his entire team through the transfer portal. And I said at the time, everyone's going to be doing this. And lo and behold, what happens? Everyone's doing this. So, but what CU and so many other teams did, they took this as an opportunity to go and get the blue chip prospects out of high school. CU with Jordan Seaton is a great example. Or they went and found skill guys. CU got speed, young, fast receivers to put with Shedeur Sanders. And it's not to say that it wasn't successful. It was just successful to a point that was far beneath where Indiana is now. And a lot of schools went the way that CU did. I'm not singling out CU. It's just a local example. What Indiana did was say, all right, everybody's zigging, let's zag. Let's not go trying to find a five-star that we missed out on a year ago, or a five-star that might be a little bit unhappy with where he is, and bring him in. Let's go get the guy at James Madison, or in Curt Cignetti's case, bring the guy from James Madison, or pick a, group of 5 school. Let's go get somebody that has produced for multiple years at that level. Bring him here. And Curt Cignetti, will coach them up. And in order to do that, you kind of got to thread a needle here. Right? That's what makes, and there's so many comparisons, I think, between what college football is now and what baseball has been. You think about Oakland A's, obviously, with Moneyball, but you think about the Tampa Bay Rays, who were extremely successful, got to a World Series with some of those same ideas. That's really hard to do. Right? Yes, it gives other teams in the same boat a lot of hope, but it doesn't guarantee success. Why the A's were so successful and why the Rays have been so successful. And don't forget, I know the Dodgers are doing all this deferred money crap right now with all these contracts, and they've become bloated and they've become the evil empire. But don't forget, they brought in Andrew Friedman to lay a foundation, the foundation he had in Tampa, and the Guggenheim Group with Magic Johnson said, and we'll give you all the money you need to be able to implement these systems. It's kind of the same thing with Indiana. They have a donor base that can give them enough money to fund all this, because the fact of the matter is you got to pay these guys. But they saved money. They didn't need as much of it because their scouting was so good, because Curt Cignetti, the coach, is so good. So the idea that you can just spend your way to a national championship, that's not the lesson that we all learned last night. The lesson we all learned is you got to have a certain amount of money, but then you got to be really smart with it. And you got to try and find the guys that no one else is looking for. I watched a few games of Fernando Mendoza. I didn't think he'd be this. And you could, everybody on Indiana, you'd be like, wait a minute, I saw that guy, the couple of guys you saw play Air Force in the bowl game. Fernando Mendoza at Cal. Some of these other players, you're like, I saw them in this other place. They weren't this good. That's Curt Cignetti. That's his coaching staff. So it's a remarkable story, and I don't think anybody is denying that. I haven't heard one negative word about Indiana. Everyone is just fawning over what Curt Cignetti has done. But again, it goes much deeper than just, hey, if you have the money, you can win at the highest level of college football. Because this is more about player development. This is more about finding market inefficiencies. This is more about getting productive football players at lower levels into your program, coaching them up to be able to compete at this level. There's so many more layers to what Indiana did. And yes, there is a price tag that comes along with all of that. But you don't have to have an unlimited budget when you have the right coach, the right system, and the right scouting to be able to put together a football team. And as Curt Cignetti pointed out earlier, it helps when you have a really good quarterback. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Hoosiers and what this means for college football. I don't know how this isn't viewed as a positive story. There are a lot of negatives that Indiana has had to navigate through, and there's a lot of negatives about where college football is right now. But if you can accept to an extent that this is the reality, you can really appreciate what Indiana has done, because they haven't gone as far as some other programs have. Yes, they're well funded, but they're still, it's identifying talent, it's coaching them up, it's the player development. That's the foundation of Curt Cignetti in Indiana. And many schools could probably raise as much money as Indiana does to fund their roster. I don't know that all of those programs have Curt Cignetti and that scouting staff. But that's the blueprint now. If you're not Ohio State, if you're not Michigan, if you're not Oregon, Indiana just became your Oakland A's. Curt Cignetti is your Billy Bean. Study what he's doing. Try to replicate it. As difficult as it might be, there is a path. So yes, it does give a lot of schools in America hope. But man, you got to get a lot right. And that's what Indiana did, to go from a 3-9 football team, the losingest college football program ever, to just 2 years being the national champion. 719-24/7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports next on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Let's get to some your early texts here on this Tuesday. Welcome back. If you took a holiday yesterday, hopefully you enjoyed your time. So I understand that we're going to be hitting some of the same topics we did on Monday. Of course, we're not far enough into the week to really start to dig into the AFC Championship. So that's on the table as well. If you have reactions coming out of Saturday, they are welcome at 719-247 1313. Started the show by talking about Jared Stidham and how defiant Sean Payton was at the podium, saying watch out, when he was talking about Jared Stidham's capability of winning the next two games. This coming in from the 719. Watch out for that career backup QB. He'll get you, LOL. Sean Payton is such a tool. Well, I will say Sean Payton is an acquired taste, and he's one of those. He's like the Patrick Beverly of head coaches. I think Ray Dominguez, my producer, might appreciate that. He's one of those that you really love to have in your corner. And if he's not, you don't like him that much. So I get that. And look, there's a middle ground here that exists where you could say, all right, do you have to say watch out? Can you just, do the normal, we'll rally, we believe in him, he's on this team for a reason, like all that kind of stuff you would expect him to say watch out. But that's not Sean Payton. It's not. And I understand how that rubs people the wrong way. Certainly I haven't at times been a full-throated supporter of Sean Payton and what he said. I believe I criticized him both after what he said about they would have beaten the Chiefs and after what he said about Nathaniel Hackett. And I've kind of taken the L on those things, if I'm being honest about it. Well, I will say, to be fair to me, because I got to be fair to me first and foremost, I didn't say he was wrong about Nathaniel Hackett. I just said that's not necessary. You don't have to do that. It is a little unbecoming of a head coach to trash one of your brethren like that. But I didn't say he was wrong. So, in fairness. This from the 719. Stiddy for the city. Yeah, the slogans, the T-shirt ideas, they're flowing over the last 48 hours. Got to get in on that, or else, Bo Nix beat everyone to the overdog thing. Did he trademark that? I don't know. He was first to market with the overdog shirts. So if you like these Jared Stidham puns and rhyming, get to your local T-shirt printer and get you some made up. This from the 719. Pat's O-line, same texter actually as the Stiddy for the city. Pat's O-line is a leaky bucket with holes. Broncos D-line will destroy May. Remember what I said, what happened to Josh Allen? Not to stop reading your text. I called for you yesterday. I said, come take your victory lap. Take your flowers. Identify yourself by name, because you took a fair amount of flack last week for your bold proclamation that the Denver Broncos, I believe, were going to turn over Josh Allen 3 times. Now, in fairness, you weren't correct. It was 5 or 4, right? Because one of the turnovers was James Cook. Jersey J. Everybody listening in your car, apologize to Jersey J. Now, I politely disagreed. I said it was a little much, but there were some other texters that were going in on Jersey J, and turns out, as shocking as it was, you're right. So good on you. So Jersey J. Anyway, I continue with that text because now Jersey J is our resident psychic. Remember what I said? What happened to Josh Allen? It happened. What do you think is going to happen to Drake May? It's going to be even worse for him. Their offensive line is so bad. He's been sacked over 60 times so far, I think, including the playoffs. I see the Broncos getting to them at least 8 times. Maybe there's a little too much, 6 at least. No, come on. Have you learned nothing from Sean Payton, Jersey J? Call your shot here. Double down. And we'll get into, I have a little bit on the matchup on Sunday coming up next hour. But this Stidham thing has really kind of thrown a wrench in everything, because what I said going into the Bills game was if they beat them, I would take them over either team playing in the other semifinal in the AFC, if you will, the other divisional game. I think I have to pause for a moment with the news of Jarrett Stidham. And I talked about this yesterday, and we'll get more into it here at the top of the hour. My biggest concern with Jarrett Stidham is game on the line. Broncos need to drive down the field to go to the Super Bowl. Is Jarrett Stidham ready for that? As far as his proficiency running Sean Payton's offense, as far as his ability to be productive throughout most of the game, I think that going back to Sean Payton calling his shot and saying, watch out, well, that also means watch out for my play calling. So I think Sean Payton is going to up his game to make sure that Jarrett Stidham can be productive on Sunday. But those clutch moments where the weight of the world is on Jarrett Stidham's shoulders, can he pull through in that moment? That's what I question. And there's no way to know. The Broncos are going to say all the right things, but there's no way to know unless he is put into that situation on Sunday. Let's see this coming in here. This Ryan, this is from Scott and Florissant. Any inside info into Coach Scott at Air Force other than the suspension? And the short answer, Scott, is no. I found out, like everybody else, when the thing came down. In all honesty, if this were happening with the women's program, I probably would have some info. But I'm not embedded with that team. I don't know what this is regarding, other than what was said in the statement. And I'll say what I said yesterday again, because I think it bears repeating. Like, look, however this turns out, my dealings with Joe Scott, because that's the other thing. Well, Ryan, you're around him. My dealings with Joe Scott have always been great. I enjoy talking basketball with him. He's passionate. He wants to win at Air Force. But my relationship is very different with Joe Scott than it is a lot of people. Not saying that there's a different, but I'm not a player of his. I'm not with the team every day. So I don't know what this is. What's the resolution? I don't know. It is unfortunate that it's even come to this, let alone whatever the next step might be. But no, I don't have any inside info on what's happening with Joe Scott. But I would imagine there would be a resolution to this one way or another sooner rather than later. Brett says, the main reason for Indiana's success is an emphasis on fundamentals. While Miami was leading with their head and shoulders and throwing cheap shots on receivers and quarterbacks, Indiana was form tackling. Yeah, I don't know how that shot after Mendoza fake, it was like an RPO kind of. I don't know how he was carrying out the fake and that Miami guy hit him. I don't know how that's not targeting. And I'm not a huge fan of targeting. I watch college football. I'm like, oh no, is that targeting? Is that targeting? Gosh, that really seemed like targeting. And I don't think that Miami would have had a leg to stand on had that been ruled that. I will say this though, last night, I was actually, that stuff aside, I was very impressed with Miami's defense. I was, because I thought they were going to be the I think I made a Game of Thrones reference, Hodor holding the door with all the night walkers or whatever they were called, trying to burst through the door. And I said they could hold it for a little while, but my thought last night was, in the first half, I just thought, man, the dam is about to break. I just thought Miami had nothing going. Indiana was kind of knocking on the door. The score wasn't lopsided, but it just felt like Indiana was completely controlling that game. I got to give a lot of credit to the Miami defense. They held out for longer than I thought they would. But yeah, some of the hits were a little questionable. This coming in from Tom. Pat's D is tough. Can Stidham put enough points to win? I don't know that this is going to be a high-scoring game. I mean, your question is still valid, Tom, but how many points are we talking about here? I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think 20 might win it. Again, your question is still valid. Can he put up even that many points? All I'm saying is he better do it in quarters 1 through 3. Because quarter 4, that Bo Nix time, that's where my worry level, if I'm a Broncos fan, would go up, that Jarrett Stidham can pull through the way that we have seen Bo Nix do so many times. We'll get to more of your text, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, speaking of Jarrett Stidham, Mike Vrabel likes Stidham. What does he like most about him? You'll hear from the Pats head coach next. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Welcome in hour 2 on this Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman with you out in Vegas. That is the reason for my very, I'm sure, expensive art that's sitting behind me that you can check out if you watch the show on a date, well, not a daily basis, because just today and tomorrow I'm here in Vegas. But you can see it. It's a nice piece. I believe it's a Monet, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe some art history majors can help me out with that. But you can't, the point here is you can watch the show on a daily basis. If you follow either KVOR or Extra Sports 1300 on social media, we stream the show live on a daily basis. So join at your leisure. And while you're there, like, subscribe, and most importantly, comment, because we like to make this an interactive experience. And of course, there's a more traditional way to talk to me. It is 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show. There are some texts that I will get to as we move along here through hour number 2. So, very different conversation, I think, that we're having this week regarding the Broncos in the AFC Championship than we were expecting to when Saturday's game ended, because it will not be Bo Nix at the helm for the Denver Broncos. It will be Jarrett Stidham. And I started the show today by talking about how Sean Payton once again calling his shot, telling everybody to watch out. That's how much he believes in Jarrett Stidham. And I don't know if everyone around the league is that way with Jarrett Stidham, but there's certainly other teams that appreciate what Jarrett Stidham brings to the table. In fact, you know that Jarrett Stidham was drafted by New England, and listening to Mike Vrabel, they wanted to bring him back into the fold. Here's what Mike Vrabel said about his pursuit of Jarrett Stidham.
Just going back to when Josh played against that, he played really well. I think enough to extend. Like we talk about a lot of quarterbacks accuracy. I think the decision maker was quite good for the games that we went back and watched with Stephen Roll back.
And that jives with what my initial thoughts were on Jarrett Stidham and what he brings to the table. The biggest thing, he sees things well. I don't know that you can say that Jarrett Stidham is better than Bo Nix in a lot of things. But I think one aspect of Jarrett Stidham's game, and I think it's important given especially the way that the New England Patriots last game went and the quarterback they faced, and some of the issues that Bo Nix has had this season, I think Jarrett Stidham is not going to be lured into making a mistake throwing the football. I would expect, if nothing else on Sunday, for Jarrett Stidham to play a clean game and not throw a crucial interception to lose the Denver Broncos the game. And I think going up, we've talked about the way that teams are playing the Denver Broncos, and I don't expect the New England Patriots to radically change who they are as a team based on Jarrett Stidham. But I think some of the issues that we have seen with Bo Nix, reading the defense, diagnosing the plays with teams sitting back in zone coverage with their eyes on him, I think Jarrett Stidham might be better at that at this stage in his career. Now, does he have the arm talent to put it into the area it needs to go? Maybe not as much as Bo Nix has. Certainly, you could say that his legs aren't as much of a weapon as Bo Nix. So there are a lot of things that the Broncos are going to have to live with that they don't have with Bo Nix, or they have a lesser version of with Jared Stidham. But I do think that, and Mike Vrabel talked about it there, I don't think we're going to be talking about Jared Stidham pulling a CJ Stroud on Sunday. I think he's going to take care of the football. And I think he knows where to look in Sean Payton's offense. He's been in Sean Payton's offense longer than Bo Nix has. So I think he's going to run the offense efficiently. I think he's going to avoid those big mistakes throwing the football. But you are sacrificing arm and leg talent with Jared Stidham. He's mobile. He's not Bo Nix mobile. And the Patriot defense, to Tom's earlier point, they get after you. They got to Herbert, 6 times? They got to CJ Stroud countless times. So there's going to be even more on the Broncos offensive line, the foundation of this football team, to help Jared Stidham out. Because he's not going to be able to escape like Bo Nix can. But he's got a little mobility. They're going to be able to play action, roll him out. He's going to be able to do some of the things that Bo Nix has done. Now, it's been a while since you've seen Jared Stidham in a real football game, hasn't it? If that is any guide, and I somewhat hesitate to use the 2 starts that he had a couple of years ago as, the be-all, end-all to predict how he's going to perform in this situation. Obviously, they were very different situations than the AFC Championship. But one thing I will say that Jared Stidham did not do a good job of. Overall, he was efficient throwing the football. I think he had a couple of touchdowns, 1 pick. But the one number that jumped out to me, and going back and watching those games, the one thing that jumped out to me, Jared Stidham took a lot of sacks. I think it was 3 in one game and 5 in the other. Which illustrates my point that he doesn't have the escapability that Bo Nix does. And it's kind of interesting that that was his big problem when Sean Payton's whole thing is don't take sacks. So I actually, if we're talking about Jared Stidham and the mistakes that he may have in a game as big as this one, I would be more worried if I'm a Broncos fan that he could kill drives by taking sacks than he could kill drives by turning the football over. And I think that's just, you see, if there's a difference between Jared Stidham and Bo Nix in their mindset, I think it's what mistake they're more willing to make, if that makes sense. They don't want to make any mistakes, or what kind of mistakes they're more prone to. I think Bo Nix would rather put the ball in harm's way than take a sack. And you could say that's the right mentality or the wrong mentality, but I just think it's been Bo Nix. There will be times that he will make a very bad decision throwing the football to avoid a sack. It's like it's so ingrained in his head that he can't take a sack that he'd rather put the ball in danger by just getting rid of it. Jared Stidham, to me, is the other way. That he doesn't want to put the ball at risk. Like, that is a foundation of who he is as a quarterback. He does not want to throw picks. But he also wants to make plays. And when you have those two things combined, it leads to a guy that maybe gets sacked a little bit more than you would like. So that is one of the big things, again, beyond just the obvious, this is the AFC championship for a guy who's been a career backup. How is he going to respond to this moment? If we strip that away, as difficult as it might be, because it's ingrained, it's what that game is, right? It's the AFC championship. You could try to do what Fernando Mendoza was talking about. I don't know if you saw the interview he did with Scott Van Pelt afterwards, but he talked about his conversations with Tim Tebow and the advice that Tebow gave him. And he gave him the advice to stay present, to stay in the moment, to not be getting caught up in all that the national championship is. I would say that's good advice for Jarrett Stidham as well. Don't get swept up in what this game is. But it's hard to do. It's hard not to. But beyond that, from a football standpoint, taking away the stage that this game is being played on, the drive killers that sacks could be, would be something that Jarrett Stidham has got to do a better job avoiding on Sunday than he did in the cameos that we saw him in a couple of years ago in relief of Russell Wilson. Again, it's 2 years ago. Take it for what it is. But if there's anything to glean, Jarrett Stidham can run Sean Payton's offense. He can be efficient throwing the football. He can avoid risky throws. But in doing all of that, maybe more susceptible to getting sacked. And I think that would be a key to the New England Patriots, as it would be. Like, look, if you're facing, a key just last week for the Denver Broncos was getting to Josh Allen. Like, you're going to try and get to every quarterback you face is so paramount to winning. And when you're facing a guy that has not had real game experience in 2 years, you're going to want to get to him early. And Mike Vrabel, being the defensive mind that he is going to scheme up ways to get through this Broncos defensive line to get to Jarrett Stidham, to try and rattle him. And that's why I say one of the big things that the Broncos can do to help, even more so than was the case against Buffalo, they got to be able to run the football. Because I think New England's going to come out and they're begging Jarrett Stidham to throw the ball early in the game. They might dare him to. I'm not saying there's something to be said for imposing your will on the game and coming out and playing your game and calling plays that you think will work. And some of those, and there's balance with that. So Sean Payton's going to throw the football. But I think within those first 15 scripted plays or whatever the number is, there needs to be a healthy amount of running the football to try and keep New England from being able to pin their ears back and go after Jarrett Stidham, because I think they're dying to. And if I'm on New England side of things, that's exactly what I'm saying. Man, if we can get to this guy who's stepping onto this stage and rattle him early, then we got the Broncos right where we want them. Jarrett Stidham's got to be able to stand up to that, certainly. But I almost look at this game, and the Super Bowl, if the Broncos get there, I think is a different story, because Jarrett Stidham would have a game under his belt, have 2 weeks of practice, all that kind of stuff, and maybe you could expect more out of him in the Super Bowl. But in the AFC Championship, I look at this and say, what can the Broncos do to help Jarrett Stidham more than what can Jarrett Stidham do to help the Denver Broncos? Running the football, protecting him, would be two obvious places to go. And defense, go do your thing against a guy who turned the ball over a few times against the Houston Texans. To wit, one of the keys to the Denver Broncos getting to this point, and what will continue to be a key for them on the defensive side of the football. That's coming up next. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. My producer Ray Dominguez and I were talking during the break about this game now, and obviously so much has changed in terms of the perception of this game and what matters the most. And we were having a conversation about the defensive side of the football. And I think there was a feeling going into the Bills game that, yes, the Denver Broncos had to get to Josh Allen. It was important. And it would help them win the game. But there was this thought of, well, at the end of the day, it's Josh Allen. So how effective can they truly be? Well, Jersey J told you on Friday how effective they could be. But I think that was kind of the sentiment was, yes, obviously you want to get to Josh Allen. It's important, but are you going to be able to? Or once you get to him, are you going to be able to affect him? Now with Jared Stidham as the starting quarterback, I think expectations have to be a bit lowered, right? A little bit. Is it enough to ultimately tip the scales in New England's direction? Doesn't have to be. But now it's like, okay, you're not facing Josh Allen. And look, Drake May has been terrific this year. I'm not saying you're going from a great quarterback to a scrub, but it's like now it's not just, hey, it would be a really good idea if you got to the quarterback, or just one of the obvious things that teams always try to do. Now it's like a necessity. You got to get to Drake May. You got to get to him. And look, we could talk about Jared Stidham never playing on this stage before. Neither is Drake May. So I almost feel like, even though Drake May is the better quarterback in this matchup, I feel like some of the same principles apply to the way I think New England's going to try and go at Jared Stidham and the way the Denver Broncos should go at Drake May. Now this is – it was almost like last week with Buffalo. The question was, can Bo Nix in the offense match what Buffalo can do? Right? With the running game with Josh Allen, is Bo Nix capable of elevating to the point he needs to be able to counter what Buffalo is going to be able to do to the Broncos defense? Now it's like, I don't know if the conversation is, can the offense match what New England's going to do? I think it's the Broncos defense has got to limit what New England can do in order to help out Jared Stidham and the Broncos offense. But one thing that we talked about going into the Buffalo game, and this is me again giving Jersey J's flowers, the talk about the Broncos as a team that can create turnovers. And I think that is, outside of obviously Bo Nix breaking his ankle, the biggest positive development out of that game, the biggest positive of the game, I can just put it that way, was the fact that the Broncos got 5 turnovers. And you wondered if, because the Chargers game, yeah, they forced 2 turnovers, Justin Herbert wasn't playing. In Jacksonville, they didn't turn Trevor Lawrence over at all. And then you go back to the Green Bay game, and that's where Patrick Surtain comes up with the interception, and where the conversation about whether the Broncos can become a team that turns over other teams really started. But you did, and I don't blame anybody. You can't really put, 2 turnovers against Trey Lance and say, well, now the Broncos certainly can turn over anybody. But after 5 turnovers against the Buffalo Bills, I think it's fair to say that the Broncos are a much improved team when it comes to taking the ball away. Now we can go turnover by turnover here. And certainly the Josh Allen fumble right before halftime, that was so crucial and so inexplicable from Josh Allen and the Bills to do that. Okay, take that one out. Well, look at Benito hitting Josh Allen and jarring the ball loose. If we're doing the what's a takeaway and what's a giveaway, all right, Josh Allen gave the ball away at the end of the first half. The Broncos took it from him on the Nick Benito sack. I think one of the biggest plays of the game going back early on was Alex Singleton forcing that fumble. And what a story Alex Singleton. I mean, for that, I know so much happened after that maybe Alex Singleton forcing that fumble is not the story. But how big was that takeaway? And that was just Alex Singleton putting his hat on the ball and knocking it away from James Cook. That was a massive play early in the game, and that was a takeaway. And then you look at the interception that Josh Allen threw. I mean, that was a pretty bad decision. But again, this Broncos secondary, there are questions about whether they could catch the ball. I mean, essentially, right? We haven't seen the Broncos even do that. Other quarterbacks have thrown that pass. Have the Broncos taken it away? And then the ultimate takeaway, obviously, was on the Brandon Cooks play. So, yeah, not all 5 turnovers in that Buffalo game do you say, well, that all credit to the Denver Broncos. There are giveaways and there are takeaways. Most of those turnovers that we saw on Saturday from the Buffalo Bills, they were takeaways. And it's something that Sean Payton has been harping on for weeks now and identified not only as a way to beat Josh Allen and the Bills, but to get to where they want to go, which is a Super Bowl. He knew they had to take the ball away. You know, all of these sacks that the Denver Broncos got this year, I mean, that's great. And obviously no one was able to touch them in terms of the number of sacks they were able to generate. But really, especially down the stretch of the season, the Broncos defense became a bend, don't break defense. And to their credit, they didn't break a lot, right? Other than the Jacksonville game. So it was good enough to get the job done. But, you know, we talked about Bo Nix and how he has to elevate his game. Well, that applies to the defense as well. And I thought that against Buffalo, they did elevate. And now you're looking at it. I know small sample size, last 3 games, 2 top turnover margin teams in the NFL, the Rams and the Denver Broncos. And the thought, think 2 months ago, before the Green Bay game, to think that the Broncos, through any stretch of time during the year, could be the second best turnover team in the league was unfathomable. Couldn't even imagine it. And yes, the story of the New England-Houston game was C.J. Stroud's turnovers more than Drake May's, but Drake May turned it over. The opportunities will be there for the Denver Broncos. Can they take advantage again like they did against Buffalo? It seemed like every opportunity that presented itself to have a turnover, the Broncos got it. I think they're going to I think, and they needed every one of those. Like, that's the thing about Saturday's game. The Broncos needed every single one of those takeaways to win that football game. But the difference between Josh Allen and Drake May, I think, even though Drake May has some of this ability, we're too early to put Drake May in the same conversation as Josh Allen. Josh Allen, he was making up for his own mistakes, so you don't give the guy a ton of credit. But Josh Allen was still able to make plays to give the Buffalo Bills a chance to win that football game despite turning over 5 times. I don't know that. Well, I can tell you, Drake Mays can't turn the ball over, or the Patriots can't turn the ball over 5 times to beat the Denver Broncos. Now, I don't think that's a hot take, but I also don't think New England is going to turn it over 5 times. But there will be opportunities. And everyone talks about the similarities between the Houston defense and the Denver defense. Well, look at what the Houston defense did. But it's not just the idea of the Broncos can create turnovers. I think the Broncos must. I don't know, with what's going on the other side of the football, as much as, and we're going to do this throughout the week. I think that the Broncos can be fine with Jared Stidham. But there's room to say that Jared Stidham can do a job for the Denver Broncos, and all hope is not lost that the Broncos can win the AFC Championship and still be able to say, this is a little bit different. Jared Stidham cannot be expected to do everything that Bo Nix did on Saturday. He just can't. That doesn't mean, and that's not necessarily a knock on the guy. But so I think there's wiggle room to say Jared Stidham, the Broncos can be fine, but if they don't get takeaways, if they don't get to Drake May, then they're going to in turn ask Jared Stidham to do too much. And that is the absolute worst thing for the Denver Broncos on Sunday, is to ask too much of Jared Stidham, to say, all right, you got to win this game for us. That can't be the case. If they're asking him to win it, he will not win it. He just won't. But that's why you have a team. That's why you have one of the best defenses in the league. Jared Stidham shouldn't have to do it against this New England team. 719-247-1313. Fire away with your text. We'll get to some of them next on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Continuing on from Vegas tomorrow night, Air Force and UNLV. You can hear that game at 7:30 on Extra Sports 1300. Tonight, we got more hoops for you, or I guess tomorrow would be the more hoops because tonight is before tomorrow. Tonight, Air Force men are in Fort Collins taking on Colorado State. You can hear that game at 6:30 on KVOR, and on Extra Sports 1300. It will be the Nuggets and the Lakers at 8 o'clock. I have some thoughts on that matchup coming up next hour. In the meantime, let's take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. This coming in from Donnie. If Stiddy beats the Pats, wins the Super Bowl, and puts up ridiculous numbers in the process, does that create an unwanted QB controversy in Denver, or does it raise Stiddy's stock to become a starter next year for another team? Ray Dominguez and I were having a conversation about something similar, and I'm not avoiding your question. I'll answer it, but we were going down the path of what if Bo Nix is medically okay to play in the Super Bowl? Kind of along the same lines of what you're saying, Donnie. You're talking about a very big picture thing here. We're talking about, just 3 weeks from now. I think I don't think that the Broncos will be able to keep Jarrett Stidham. That's where I would come down on that. Like the idea of, is Bo Nix, going to be supplanted as the starter? I think it's more likely that Sean Payton, who has said on numerous occasions, when it comes to his coaches, when it comes to his players, he wants to do right by them, right? The whole Sam Ehlinger thing this year where, Ehlinger's had multiple opportunities to go take the gig with the Colts and he's wanted to stay. If Sean Payton is true to his word, he will let Jarrett Stidham parlay the kind of success you're talking about, Donnie, into another gig. I think that's the most likely scenario, but man, you're throwing in the Super Bowl with it. If the Broncos win the Super Bowl, man, you would have quite the dilemma, I would say. What happened to Nick Foles after he led the Eagles to the Super Bowl, and how did that turn out for the Eagles? I think now you got me doubting my initial take. I think if he checks all of those boxes that you're putting up there, beats the Pats, wins the Super Bowl, and puts up ridiculous numbers, if he's the reason why the Broncos win the next 2 games, then there has to be a conversation internally in Denver. There would just have to be. I mean, how could you not have a thought here about, man, we could extend Jarrett Stidham now at less money than Bo Nix is going to ultimately cost us a few years from now. I don't think Sean Payton is looking that far into the future. George Payton's job is to. If all of those boxes are checked, I think you would have a quarterback controversy, and I think I would be sitting here on these airwaves talking about what you can get for Bo Nix. Now, let's peel back a little bit. Okay, let's say he's not the reason why they win a Super Bowl. And he's what I expect him to be. Like, capable, not putting the ball in harm's way, giving the Broncos a chance to win. Then I think it goes to what I said. Even if they win the Super Bowl, I think it goes to what I said, that Sean Payton would not be living up to his word if he didn't immediately help Jarrett Stidham go get a starting gig somewhere. And I mean, all these teams, the Patriots, the Raiders, are coming out of the woodwork and talking about how disappointed they were that they couldn't either sign Jarrett Stidham or keep him. Jarrett Stidham for a year before Fernando Mendoza takes over here in Vegas, where I'm sitting right now. I don't know where the landing spot would be, but I think if Jarrett Stidham is capable and the Broncos end up winning the Super Bowl, or if they just win this game, if they win this game and then lose the Super Bowl, it's easy. No quarterback controversy, because then the conversation becomes, well, if they had Bo Nix. Then it's, okay, does somebody want to bring in Jarrett Stidham? And if somebody does, then I think Sean Payton would have to let him go. And I mentioned Sam Ehlinger. Don't forget about him. You know, Sean Payton clearly is treating him like he treats Jarrett Stidham, because Sam Ehlinger keeps turning down starting gigs, or the potential of a starting gig, to be the third quarterback on the Broncos roster. So clearly the Broncos love him. So I could see a scenario of Jarrett Stidham plays well, maybe not well enough for the Broncos to win, or the Broncos win the Super Bowl and Jarrett Stidham is not really, he's not running a Philly to help the Denver Broncos win the game. Then I think Jarrett Stidham gets traded, Ehlinger becomes the backup quarterback, and away the Broncos go with the rest of their lives with Bo Nix. But in that, out of a dream for the Denver Broncos and their fans, that Jarrett Stidham steps out there and he completely balls out and the Denver Broncos win the Super Bowl, then I will be on this show saying that you should explore trade options with Bo Nix. But all that being said, I don't foresee that Jarrett Stidham checks all of those boxes. I'm not saying that the Broncos can't win the Super Bowl with Jarrett Stidham, or they can't win Sunday with Jarrett Stidham. But I don't envision Jarrett Stidham playing so well that we have to have that conversation. But I like where your head's at, Donnie. Because Ray and I were just talking about, what if Jarrett Stidham wins this week and Bo Nix is somehow available for the Super Bowl? I believe the team that the Broncos play on Sunday faced a little bit of that dilemma, didn't they? Didn't they? So the Brady thing happened. They went back to Drew Brees in the AFC Championship, and then back to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, right? Tom, back me up on this, or correct me if I'm wrong. But the Patriots did this. It didn't exactly follow the same timeline, but the idea of the quarterback that everybody's like, he's the guy. Well, they had to go away from him on a huge stage, and then they got to the next biggest stage and they went back. But the prognosis, the health of Bo Nix, if he's somehow able, it would be a little bit different, I think, than that Patriots situation, because we'd be talking about Bo Nix. One of his strengths is his running ability, and he's on a surgically repaired ankle that he got repaired 3 weeks ago. It's fun, though. It's a fun scenario to think about. And I think Broncos fans would take it, because that means they're Super Bowl champions. Brett says if Stidham leads the Broncos to a Super Bowl championship, he will be the next Nick Foles, sign a big contract, and then go away into the darkness. That might be the next step. Because Jared Stidham would no longer have Sean Payton. So, but I think it might entirely play out that way. But the first step would be we don't have a quarterback controversy in Denver. It would be let Jared Stidham go and seek a bigger opportunity somewhere else. And how that works out, not really the Broncos' problem, is it? This coming in from the 719. You can't ask Stidham to win you the game. You just have to ask him not to lose it for you. The game, other people are going to have to step up on, including the defense, obviously. And I'll get back into it here at the top of the hour, but I think you're 100% right. You put it perfectly. The Broncos cannot ask Jared Stidham to win them the game, but I think it is well within their right, if you will, to say, Jared Stidham, don't you dare lose this for us. But if that's the scenario, to your point, it means got to get to Drake May, got to force turnovers, got to help out Jared Stidham, got to be able to run the ball. J.K. Dobbins, of course, activated from IR. They now have a 21-day window. This is a procedural thing. This does not mean he's coming back, although on Instagram, J.K. Dobbins posted a picture of himself running from the tunnel and with the caption "back soon." Whether it's J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey and Jaleel McLaughlin, although Sean Payton has talked about getting 3 backs involved, very difficult, or whether J.K. Dobbins can't make it back for Sunday, the Denver Broncos have to run the ball, and I would say have to run the ball better than even they did against Buffalo, because I don't foresee Drake May turn the ball over 5 times. I just don't see it. 719-24-7-13-13, Tom says 20 points might win it, but can Jared Stidham do it? I don't think without, again, the turnover conversation, I don't think without creating turnovers. I think the Broncos defense has to take the ball from the Patriots and give Jared Stidham a short field. I know 20 doesn't sound like a lot, but there were times this season where the Broncos offense could not muster that many points. I don't know if the Broncos defense or the Broncos offense can put up 20 plus points if the defense is not taking the ball away, or at least if the defense isn't giving them great field position by, sacking Drake May or turning him over. That's kind of where I'm at today. But with the Broncos recently being able to create turnovers, I think Jared Stidham has the ability to take advantage. Continue to take your thoughts. 719-24-7-13-13. Coming up next, we'll hit the 3 stories that are driving the show. Of course, more on Jared Stidham, more on Indiana winning the national championship, and the NFL coaching carousel continues to turn. A couple of jobs have been taken over the last 24 hours. I'll tell you what they are and what's left for maybe Vance Joseph and Davis Webb next on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman coming your way live from the happiest place on earth. No, not that one. My happiest place on earth, Las Vegas. Tomorrow night, Air Force women's basketball taking on UNLV. In the meantime, welcome in. Appreciate you listening, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, extrasports1300.com, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or if you're listening on KVOR, kvor.com, and the KVOR app, as we continue to simulcast the show on both stations. If you're just discovering the show today, welcome. Happy to have you. Hope you stick around. Would love to talk to you. 719-247-1313 is the text and phone line if you want to interact. If you have some thoughts on the day's topics, like perhaps maybe you have thoughts on these, which are the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with story number 1, and Sean Payton isn't the only NFL head coach that is a fan of Jarrett Stidham. That is Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel, who now has to face Jarrett Stidham on Sunday in the AFC Championship. Of course, Stidham drafted by the New England Patriots, but it kind of lends credence to what Sean Payton has said about the fact that he has a quarterback in Stidham that could start in other places. And I know, New England has Drake May, but there was a time, where Drake May didn't start immediately. So Jarrett Stidham could have started off the Patriots season and then them go to Jarrett Stidham. But it just speaks to that Jarrett Stidham is well respected. His talents are in demand as a backup, obviously. Now we get to see if that translates to being the starting quarterback on the biggest stage of the season. But the scout there from Mike Vrabel, if you want to call it that, the thing that sticks out to me is when he says the way Jarrett Stidham sees things and his decision making. That speaks to a guy that is not going to lose the Denver Broncos this game on Sunday. I think the best thing you can say about Jarrett Stidham right now, the thing that you can say with maybe a little bit of authority, is that Jarrett Stidham is not going to lose the Denver Broncos the game. I think some of the throws that Bo Nix is prone to make, leading to turnovers, I don't think Jarrett Stidham, when he has been on the field, that hasn't been who he is. Now, I do think that last time we checked in with Jarrett Stidham in a real football game, he was taking too many sacks. But I don't think he's, especially with how many my God, how many turnovers did we have last weekend in the divisional round? I don't think Jarrett Stidham is going to turn the ball over for the Denver Broncos. He's going to give them a chance to win by not losing them the game. But the Broncos have to do their part and not asking him to win it for him. Right? There's a difference between not losing the game and winning the game. They cannot put Jared Stidham in the position where, hey, some of that fourth quarter magic that Bo Nix had, we need some of that from you. Hey, Jared Stidham, can you scramble around and go for a big run? That's not what he does. And it would be unfair for the Broncos to put him in that position. So I think if you're a Broncos fan, you could feel comfortable that Jared Stidham isn't going to come in and blow it up. And not to pick on him, but like a Jameis Winston where he comes out and all of a sudden throws like 3 picks in a game. I don't think Jared Stidham's going to do that. And I think Sean Payton's going to make sure that he doesn't do that. But that next level, which is Jared Stidham, can you do all the good things that Bo Nix does, including driving us down the field to win the game in the fourth quarter? That is not the position the Denver Broncos want to be in on Sunday. But there are some things that you could feel confident in with Jared Stidham going into Sunday's game. Speaking of quarterbacks in the AFC West, this guy may be joining the AFC West here in a few months. Here's story number 2. Sean McDonough on the call for ESPN Radio last night as the Indiana Hoosiers win their first national title ever by beating the Miami Hurricanes 27-21. The indelible image of that game will be that 4th down run by Fernando Mendoza where he was hit by, I think, like 3 different Hurricanes and reached the ball across the goal line. What a story Indiana is. What a story Fernando Mendoza is. Hard not, I get it. The way he is kind of is a little, I think the kids would say cringy at times, but man, his story and his family and all of that kind of stuff that if you didn't know about it, you found out about it last night. Like, it's easy to root for Fernando Mendoza. And the Indiana Hoosiers were an easy team to root for. Because they were maybe not in the game, but this season they were the ultimate underdogs, 200-1 at the beginning of the season. And because of that, a sentiment has gone around the college football world in the last 24 hours that, well, now your program doesn't have an excuse. Now anyone can do it. Indiana's won a title. And I get it. That's the natural place you go. And it does give other programs hope that if you get serious about your football program and all that it entails, you can win. But I think there's a connotation that goes along with that to where the idea is you could just buy your way to a national title. Oh, Indiana, NIL, that's why they won. Not really. Now, some estimates do have them with one of the 10 most expensive rosters in college football, but they are nowhere close to number 1. And they're not just spending money. It's not like Texas Tech that is just going out and paying top dollar for every football player that has any inkling of wanting to go to Lubbock. They took the money that they had. They got above the threshold necessary to field a competitive team in the or a playoff team in today's day and age of college football. They did that, and other schools are going to have to do that. But they spent their money so wisely. That is really the difference. The story of this Indiana team is not one of deep-pocketed donors and buying a championship. This is closer to Moneyball than that. Kurt Signetti has a roster full of guys that were playing at schools that you don't think about or maybe never even heard of. In fact, his star linebacker played for James Madison against Air Force in a bowl game in 2023 that Air Force won. They had a running back last night that was from that James Madison team. What Indiana did was find, and this is a buzz phrase with Moneyball and Billy Bean and the Tampa Bay Rays later, finding the market inefficiency. When the floodgates opened and the NIL world arrived, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody because Indiana didn't, a lot of teams took that as an opportunity to buy up all these young, flashy, blue chip studs. CU did it locally. That was their portal year one. And look, teams had success doing that. Now, I'm not saying that was a bad plan, but that plan had limitations. And that, I think, the biggest limitation is maybe the moment not being too big. Right? These blue chip 5 stars that are freshmen or sophomores. They don't know winning. These guys that Kurt Signetti brought into the program, they were very successful at their level of college football. And Kurt Signetti said, I can coach them up to win at this level. They zagged while everyone was zigging. And now everyone's going to be zagging because they're going to try and follow the Indiana blueprint. And I think that it's diminishing just how special this is and just how good of a coach Kurt Signetti is, that people think, oh, we could do that. I don't, maybe not. You know, how many years, because I keep making the comparison between college football and baseball because I think there is one. How many years have the Rockies tried to replicate what the Tampa Bay Rays have done? Or the Pittsburgh Pirates? You know, work out for them? Mm-mm. So first, you got to prioritize veteran players that have had success, even if it's at a lower level of college football. Don't look for the measurables. Don't look at what they were ranked coming out of high school. Don't look at their 40 time. Look at the production on the field. I think a lot of schools could probably do that. But then there's still the matter of this guy who was terrific at James Madison has got to be good at Indiana now. And that's where Kurt Signetti comes in. So I see the blueprint too. I think it's smart for a lot of schools to go that route, and many will try. But there's a reason why the Rays in baseball were as successful as they were, and why Andrew Friedman is now the boss in LA. Because they did all these things, but also they had the smartest people in the room, the best people in the room, to be able to take these perhaps overlooked, ignored players and be able to be productive with them. So to say anyone can do it now, yeah, in theory, but that's also kind of diminishing what Indiana did, because they have a remarkable head coach and a remarkable coaching staff. But now they're going to be the blueprint. Now, I don't know for right away Ohio State or Georgia or some of those schools, but there will be a lot of schools lower in the Big Ten that will say, well, maybe we can do this. But it's a fascinating blueprint to follow, and what a great story Indiana is. Yeah, they spend money, but they're smart about it. And that's part of the reason why they are national champions. Now, from Kurt Signetti's current gig to maybe a future one, the coaching carousel in the National Football League continues to turn. There have been a couple of deals agreed to. Yesterday, it was Jeff Hafley. Miami fires Mike McDaniel. I thought it was all about getting Harbaugh, and they hired Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator from the Green Bay Packers. Of course, the GM is from Green Bay, so the fit is there. I just thought Miami was going to be looking bigger, although Harbaugh went to New York. So maybe that was plan A, but plan B is Jeff Hafley. So Miami going the defensive side of the football moving forward. The Atlanta Falcons, once again, bringing in they're going back, right? So they went the Arthur Smith was not it. Could not get the most out of Kyle Pitts in that Falcons skill position group. So then they went Raheem Morris. And now they're going back to the offensive side by bringing in Kevin Stefanski to run that. And I think, look, the Miami thing, okay. I think this signals that Miami is maybe far away here, which begs the question, why don't you trade Jalen Waddle? But that's a story for another day. With Atlanta, this is we can win this division now, and we're going to go for it. And I think Kevin Stefanski, the whole Shador thing, and towards the end, a lot of things were said about Kevin Stefanski that I don't know are 100% true. The fact of the matter is this guy has been a coach of the year. This guy helped take one of the worst franchises in football to the playoffs. This is a really good hire by Atlanta. But I will say that I thought Raheem Morris was a really good hire for Atlanta. Where this one makes even more sense is now it's Michael Penix. And can Kevin Stefanski do some of the things with Penix that he did maybe for Baker Mayfield? So I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a win now type hire. And, man, we keep looking at this Atlanta Falcons roster and go, why in the world can't they win games? It is truly baffling with that collection of talent. Like, they are a Madden team. You would love to do a season with Atlanta on Madden. They have so much talent. We'll see if Kevin Stefanski can put it together, because he did some really good things. And I think he's a good fit there, but there was a ceiling on what Stefanski was able to do in Cleveland. Maybe going to a better organization in Atlanta will make all the difference. And then you have the Tennessee Titans hiring Robert Saleh, 49ers defensive coordinator. There was a savage tweet by Ian Rappaport today talking about Saleh now taking a job with the quarterback. Like, what a crazy thing to say, given that the quarterback he had was Sam Darnold, and now Sam Darnold is one win away from going to a Super Bowl. Like, I'm not saying that Robert Saleh is a bad hire, but to say that Robert Saleh, now he has a quarterback, like, you could argue he had one in New York. He couldn't do anything with him. So I wouldn't go as far as Ian Rappaport did today, but I think Robert Saleh is a really good coach. And let's be honest, even with Cam Ward, the Tennessee Titans are quite far down in the pecking order. So you get a guy that's done it before. You bet on his second time around, maybe learning some lessons. Certainly that Titans defense needs a lot of help. He'll help out there for sure. But can he develop Cam Ward? I don't know that. So I am very interested to see who Robert Saleh brings in to be his offensive coordinator, because that will be, I think, as important as the Tennessee Titans hiring Robert Saleh. But I like him, brilliant defensive mind. I think it's a solid hire, but who you getting for your OC? If I'm a Titans fan, that's what I care about. And the fact that now he and Liam Cohen will see each other twice a year. That will be fun. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Of course, there are still some jobs available. So Davis, I almost called him Davis Mills, Davis Webb or Vance Joseph, are they fits for any of the remaining openings in the National Football League? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Nuggets taking on the Lakers tonight. No Nikola Jokic, but some thoughts on that one. You can hear the game at 8 o'clock on Extra Sports 1300 on 740 KVOR. It will be Air Force men's basketball taking on in-state rival Colorado State. 6:30, if I didn't mention the time. I want to talk Nuggets Lakers here in a little bit, but as I said, the NFL coaching carousel continues to turn. Robert Saleh, Jeff Hafley, and Kevin Stefanski all getting head coaching gigs in Tennessee, Miami, and Atlanta, respectively. So now we can kind of reshuffle the deck a little bit and see, are there any fits for Vance Joseph and Davis Webb? Now, I think I don't know if it's even a theory, but if I'm an organization, and the Raiders have done this, Vance Joseph with Davis Webb as the offensive coordinator. I think that I know Davis Webb's name has been floated lately with the Bills job. That is a big job. That is a big, big job for Davis Webb, who, 10 seconds ago, no one ever heard of. And now he's going to take over that job. Like what? Baltimore's not interested? Like, I don't do that. Now, I don't even know if I'm Baltimore or Buffalo that I go Vance Joseph with Davis Webb being the offensive coordinator. I would have interest in Davis Webb as my offensive coordinator, but if I'm Buffalo and I'm Baltimore, gosh, is that the route I go? Vance Joseph with a side of Davis Webb? I don't think so. If I'm the Raiders, and I'll say this louder and open up the window since I'm in Vegas, for where they're at, Vance Joseph and Davis Webb, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I don't think it's guaranteed that Vance Joseph can't be a good head coach in this league. I think he was in over his skis. He didn't have a quarterback. And I think that Vance Joseph, and he's talked about this over the last couple of weeks, he's learned how all of this works, this interviewing process, but I think he's also learned lessons from the last time he was a head coach. I'm not saying Vance Joseph can't be successful as a head coach. I'm just saying the Raiders are a team that is in a position to take that chance. Buffalo and Baltimore are not, in my opinion. I would be shocked if Vance Joseph takes either one of those two jobs. The Raiders and the Cardinals, both. And then obviously Vance has ties to Arizona, being the defensive coordinator there before he came to Denver. So I think that Vance Joseph Davis Webb combo, and don't forget about, Cleveland would be another team that could take that chance. But I go back to what Sean Payton had said last week about like what advice he gave them. I think he said no Shangri-La or no Nirvana or something like that. Like there's no perfect place. There's no perfect job. But he said there are places that you can't win. And it goes back to the comments he made about there are 20 teams in the league that can't win because of the owner. How many of the jobs I just mentioned, let's say Buffalo, Baltimore, not in the Vance Joseph, Davis Webb business? And we're talking about Cleveland, Arizona, Vegas. Bidwell, Davis, and Haslam. Do any of those three strike you as the owners that would be among the 10 or 12 that Sean Payton is talking about. I know Steve Bisciotti is in Baltimore. I think Sean Payton would tell them if they got offered a job with the Ravens, take it. Buffalo, ooh, I don't know. But I don't think Buffalo is interested in Vance Joseph and Davis Webb. So are one of those three jobs, I mean, Vance Joseph knows the Bidwells better than Sean Payton does. So Vance Joseph would be able to speak to whether that's an ownership situation that he would want to be a part of. Now, I will say this for Mark Davis as opposed to Jimmy Haslam. I don't think that Mark Davis has been as active a participant in the destruction or continuing destruction of his franchise the way that Jimmy Haslam has been. I think Mark Davis is a little like Dick Monfort in this way. I think he really wants to win, and he'll give up whatever he can. Whatever, if you ask him, if you write a check for this much, you would win. He would do it in a heartbeat. If he could be guaranteed success by hiring this coach or that coach or making this move or that move, he would do it in a second. I think Mark Davis here in Las Vegas desperately wants to win. I just don't think he knows how. And I don't think that he's surrounding himself with necessarily with people, although he gets the GM from Tampa. Tom Brady's a part. I mean, they've been a part of winning, but they're in very different roles now. I think the Raiders mess is just because I don't know that they know how. I think Sean Payton's comments are more about owners who actively tank their team, and I don't mean tanking like to get better draft odds, like tank because they meddle, or tank because they're not willing to do whatever it takes. They're not willing to write the checks that are necessary, not willing to empower their head coach. I don't think Mark Davis and the Raiders are that way. I just think they don't know how. They don't have a clue. So would the Raiders be one of those situations that Sean Payton seems to be warning Davis Webb and Vance Joseph about? I don't know. I know that Cleveland's got to be one of those. And talking to people who have been around the Cardinals organization, the Cardinals are one of those. So you add all of that up, I don't know if Vance Joseph's going to get a head coaching job this cycle. I think the Ravens and the Bills cannot take the risk that he hasn't figured out being a head coach. I think that Sean Payton would strongly advise Vance Joseph not go to Arizona and Cleveland. And that leaves Vegas as kind of the spot. If Sean Payton doesn't think that the Raiders are a doomed situation. And obviously Vance Joseph is his own man. He might take the job anyway. The Raiders are not a great job because you have to deal with the Broncos. You have to deal with Harbaugh. You have to deal with Mahomes. But if you just took it in a vacuum, I think that the folks in Vegas are really trying. I just think they don't know how to win or haven't shown it yet. I don't think that the Raiders would be a bad spot for Vance Joseph to take that job. I mean, yeah, you're not going to win in the near future, but I mean, you're going to have Fernando Mendoza. I got to imagine he and Davis Webb work well together. I mean, there are less ideal situations than that. So I'm with Vance Joseph and Davis Webb. Davis Webb's different because he can get an OC job and doesn't have to be tied to Vance Joseph. But as far as Vance goes, I think the jobs that, Miami, possibly, like Tennessee, I think those are some of the jobs that you could see Vance Joseph having, and they're gone. So I really think the nexus of, a place that would be interested in him and a place that's not almost assured disaster, I think it's Vegas. And even then, it's going to be incredibly difficult. As far as Davis Webb, he could be an OC with Chargers would be a tough move, but he could be the OC in Buffalo. So I think the options for Vance Joseph are dwindling. There are almost none. With Davis Webb, I could see, not for the head coaching gig in Baltimore or Buffalo, but could he be the offensive coordinator there? So more options for Davis Webb, leaving the Broncos as an OC, 0 for him being a head coach. And with Vance Joseph, I think we're down to the nitty gritty here with jobs that Vance Joseph seems like a fit for. Also wanted to get to this. It's not related to the Broncos at all, but it's just something that struck me. What's going on with Mike McDaniel? So Detroit hires Drew Petzing, who is the Cardinals offensive coordinator. You know the Cardinals, the team that puts up a ton of points and has gotten great quarterback play over the last few years with Kyler Murray. You know that team, right? So the Lions go with Drew Petzing instead of Mike McDaniel, which to me makes no sense. And the Lions say it wasn't a fit. Okay, well, I think you make it a fit because I think Mike McDaniel would be a great offensive coordinator, has been a great offensive coordinator. So what Detroit did is perplexing, puzzling. But with the Saleh taking the Tennessee job, because I just said in the last segment, like Robert Saleh, I like Robert Saleh. He'll help out the Tennessee defense. But who's going to be his OC? How about Mike McDaniel? Now we're, old guy phrase, cooking with gas. Robert Saleh and Mike McDaniel in Tennessee. But Mike McDaniel reportedly turning down the Cleveland job. Good for him. But that Detroit job, like, okay, Dan Campbell, you whiffed when you were replacing your coordinators this year, and you went a little off the board with this guy. Good luck with that. 719-247-1313. Last call for your text on this Tuesday. Coming up next, Lakers and Nuggets. This is rivalry week in the NBA, but are we kind of over Nuggets Lakers? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. All right, it is ball night, both here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300 coming up in less than an hour. It will be coverage of Air Force men's basketball taking on Colorado State. Tip-off, I think I misspoke earlier, which tends to happen. I also accidentally called Drew Brees earlier, but you got to forgive me. I'm talking Patriots and Sean Payton. And anyway, Jim Arthur will have the call on 740 KVOR, coverage at 6:30, tip-off at 7 from Moby Arena. And then on Extra Sports 1300, it will be the Nuggets and the Lakers. Late start, national televised game. And it will start at, tip-off will be at 8 o'clock. Now, first, let me get to what is the most pertinent piece of information regarding this game. Who's playing? And it's a little bit of a mixed bag lately for these teams. Well, first of all, for the Lakers side of it, the only guy that you may even remotely care about is Austin Reeves, who is out. So Austin Reeves is out. LeBron available. Luka available. For the Nuggets side of things, Jokic is still out. Still, we're 9-10 days away from the big reveal on whether Nikola Jokic is truly coming back at the end of January. Cam Johnson out. Christian Brown is still out, along with Jonas Valanciunas. Aaron Gordon, though, probable. Tim Hardaway Jr., probable. Jamal Murray, most importantly, probable. So Jamal Murray against the Lakers is always a fun time, but he will be in that lineup tonight. But what I'm kind of thinking about, and it's not like, look, I'm sure the Lakers never viewed the Nuggets as a rival, or only have for like the last little bit. So this is not me trying to, dog on the LA Lakers or anything like that. But this is called rivalry week in the NBA. And it's certainly, I understand why the Nuggets and the Lakers are playing each other during rivalry week. Certainly in recent memory, they have gone through each other to win titles. But I don't know. This game doesn't have the same juice. It does. I think, and not saying I'm not going to watch. I'm absolutely going to watch. I'm going to try to find an establishment here in Las Vegas to watch the game and eat dinner and, whatever else may transpire over the course of the evening. I mean, I'm going to watch. But it just feels like, especially with the Nuggets' success and the Lakers' lack thereof, it kind of feels like there was a moment when the Nuggets went through the Lakers in the Western Conference Final to get to the NBA Finals. And the Nuggets were going one way, obviously. And I guess they're not continuing to climb after it. They've kind of gone down, certainly, but now they're back up and the Lakers are just kind of where. But my point is, the Nuggets have bigger fish to fry, I guess is the way that I would put it. I think we're all kind of collectively waiting for February 1st for when maybe Jokic comes back, that being the first thing. But secondly, they play OKC. I think that's where these teams are right now. That I don't know about you. I just feel like the game right now, and that's probably what it is. If this game were a month ago or 2 months ago, it would be a different story. But it just feels like we're all waiting for February 1st because it's Jokic potentially returning, and it's that first matchup with OKC because inexplicably we haven't had one yet. And I think that's just where I'm at with the Nuggets at this on the calendar. And this game just isn't. I don't know, but I can say this right now. I mean, none of these games. You think Charlotte the other night was pulling me away from divisional playoff games? No. So I think this is the game where I'm like, if there's one that would feel a little bit more like an event, like a tune-in event, it would be this one more than, playing Charlotte or the other teams that Hawks and other teams that they've played lately. And certainly I don't know if you want to call it animus. It's just the Lakers organization has changed so much. It's almost like, and I know LeBron's still there, and I know they have a few guys remaining from those Lakers teams that met the Nuggets in the playoffs, but it's like now it's Luka's team. And it just feels like if this rivalry is going to, and maybe that is the reason to tune in tonight. Maybe there will be something that will light a Lakers Nuggets, a Luka Lakers Nuggets rivalry. Like maybe there will be some juice there with Luka, but it just feels like the Lakers are so different than they were when the Nuggets and the Lakers were battling here. And then with all the injuries and the waiting for OKC, I guess it doesn't feel like it has felt the last couple of years when the Nuggets play the Lakers. But at the same time, I'm sitting here saying I got to find an establishment to watch the game, and I want to watch it. So it's certainly more than the Nuggets in Charlotte or the Nuggets in Atlanta. So maybe it doesn't have the juice that it may have had a calendar year ago or 2 years ago. But it's still, look at the Nuggets schedule of late. Like, this is the most interesting game they've had for a while. But maybe Luka and Jamal will put on a little show tonight. But Murray, Hardaway, Gordon, all probable. Jokic, Cam Johnson, Christian Brown, all out for the Lakers. Luka and LeBron are available. Austin Reeves is not. One other thing that I will say here, and I got limited time, but this is something important I want to talk to you about. It's time to get real about your health in this new year. We all make those New Year's resolutions, right? Well, this is a really good one. Get your testosterone levels checked with Synergenics and Low T Center. For a limited time, the men's TRT test is free. And even I'm talking to you ladies as well. The women's hormone test, you could take $200 off right now. Say no to diet trends, questionable online treatments, and deceptive prices from other places. If you're looking for the best, Synergenics and Low T Center are the leading experts. Meet with a real provider, get real medication, and real results. Just walk in, or you can book an appointment at getmyhealthfix.com. That's getmyhealthfix.com, Synergenics and Low T Center, because it's never too late to make a New Year's resolution. It has been my resolution. It has been my pleasure to serve you. My thanks to Ray Dominguez back at the Extra Sports 1300 studios. Let's do it again tomorrow at 3. I'll be in Vegas. You'll be where you are, but we'll chat here on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR.